Like people go
Can you say that
looking.
again? I think people have to actually realize what you just said. This is the first time I've heard it. I've never heard that before.
So, this might be the motivation you need. This listening to this podcast and might just be the ticking point.
So, Anu, it is great to have you here. And I wanted to understand how you got into business. And I wanted to know, why did you decide to start a business?
Thanks for having me, Lindo. I started a business out of pure spite, actually. I was traveling around Australia working as a doctor and locuming. And in Australia, the only way to find shifts and locum shifts, which are ones in which you work in rural and remote hospitals to pick up work that other people couldn't fill. So it's like contractor work, is to go through a middleman locum agency. And throughout 2022, I had heaps of issues with all the locum agencies I was working with, contract issues, payment issues, communication issues. The problem really crossed over when, in the end of 2022, I got sued by one of my locum agencies. I
Wow.
didn't realize it, but I had inadvertently broken a contract I had made with them, which was a lock-in contract in the fine print of the contract I signed, which basically said if a locum agency placed me at a hospital for the next 12 months, I was not allowed to sign a contract directly with that hospital without the agency taking their cut. And essentially, what had happened was 7 months after I'd previously worked at a hospital, they had contacted me personally, asked me to work. I signed directly with
Mm,
the hospital. The agency found out and sued me, or threatened to sue me. And all this hurt. It didn't hurt me. I was still making the same rate regardless of whether I was with an agency or without an agency. All this hurt was the public hospital that was severely underfunded and a healthcare system that is crumbling in this country. And I thought there must be a better way. And so through that pure anger and frustration, I built StatDoctor.
mm. So walk me through the process because when people think about building a business, especially with you right now, you have StatDoctor. There's a long process involved. How do you go from being frustrated to where you were, right? That's where you left off. You were frustrated with the system. What were the exact steps that you took to actually create that company?
I'm disappointed to say the steps I took are not the steps I would take now. So I will tell you what I did do, and I tell you what I wish I had done. So firstly, what I did do is I didn't act straight away. I waited for 6 months, kept enduring the pain and the pain points I was suffering, thinking this is how it must be. And waiting that time and waiting for someone else to potentially solve a problem I was facing is a huge error I made. And I think a lot of people who end up starting businesses make, which is they feel the pain points so often, but they don't start early enough. You might as well start because no one else is going to build a solution to the level if you're feeling the pain yourself. The first step I took was to look around my network to see if anyone I actually knew could help me. And at that time, look, I'm a doctor and I had a huge doctor network and lots of doctor friends, but no entrepreneurial friends, no
Mm,
business related friends. My family aren't businessy. And so I didn't really have someone to lean on to help. So I had to kind of work
mm,
it all out on my own. I then went into an accelerator program here in Melbourne, and they have them all over the world, which is basically you say, "Hey, I have no idea what to do. Help." And I
mm,
was pretty lucky. Went through a couple of accelerators with this. I had an idea to begin with, and then I ended up building a product. And that slowly, one, taught me a little bit about business, taught me a bit about sales and marketing, which I had no experience of, taught me a little about product development, helped me develop a product, and then kind of move along. But it was a long 2 year
mm,
process that probably could have been 3 to 6 months if I had the knowledge I had now. And that's what they always say is second
mm.
time founders are 10 times better than first time founders because you've already done it before. But if we can pass the knowledge on to first time founders can be just as good as second time founders.
Can you elaborate that? You said that first-time founders could be just as good as second-time founders. What does that mean exactly?
It's a common adage in the startup world that investors will always question themselves with a person who's a first time founder. But if they've already attempted to find, even if the business was a complete failure, if they're a second time founder, the investment is always more secure. And that's because the learnings you make as you build a business whether it fails or goes IPO or whatever, is so significant that you are such a better founder the second time round. And so what I'm really trying to do is take all the learnings I've made from the failures I've made over the last 2 years of building a business to try and motivate and inspire others to build businesses, but also to build them better and the process better than I did. So try and make them essentially second-time founders using the mistakes I made as a first-time founder, even though they're first-time founders.
How would they be able to do that?
I think it's about networks and having personalized advice. I think a lot of the content and advice on social media is very generalized. Like, for example, I had a phone call just before coming here. He was an anaesthetist in Sydney, and he said, "Hey, I have this idea. I don't know what the next step is." And I was pretty easy to say, "Hey, look, your next steps need to be set up a business, get a business bank account, start creating a wait list, start telling people about your idea and seeing what they say." And he hadn't thought about that. He'd been sitting on this idea for 6 months, and he was like, "I didn't know the next step." And it's like something so easy for me, like that would be the next steps no matter what. And he was like, "Oh, I didn't know I could talk about my idea because I'm scared other people are going to steal it." And I was like, "You have to talk about it at some point." And he's like, "Yeah, but I don't have a product or a website." I said, "Yeah, but you can create a wait list. You don't have to you don't have to have something to show them. You can say, 'Hey, this is what I want to build. If you want to stay up to date, come join.' And then when the product launches, you have 100, 200, 500, 1,000 people ready to go." All these things I didn't do. They're all the errors I made. I didn't have a wait list. So I was already 6 months to a year behind when we started. If I started building a wait list, my company would be so much further ahead. So things like that. I mean, practical one-on-one advice that's relevant to the individual, relevant to their business, I think is really effective.
Got it. You mentioned that it took you 6 months to actually act upon starting your business. There's probably a lot of people who feel that same way, maybe even longer, 12 months, 24 months,
Yeah.
right? How can they reduce the time frame so that they can act now?
I think you just have to take the leap. I mean, if you keep waiting for the right time, you'll wait forever. So, this might be the motivation you need. This listening to this podcast and webinar that we're doing might just be the ticking point. But so many people wait for so long, and so many ideas end up in the grave. So many billions of dollars ends up in the grave, and so many innovative, life-changing solutions ends up in the grave. You get one life, you might as well try and do it, and you might as well try and do it now.
But Anu, here's the thing. I mean, I'm going to go deeper with you. I'm going to push back a little bit because a lot of people hear that. They hear get started now, just do it now. This could be the point for you. And they still don't do it. So what is holding them back? Obviously, people need something more. What is it?
I think it's the first step. I think it's really hard to think, I have an idea, I want to build a business. They're this far apart. But you don't need to go from here to here. You just need to go from here to here. So no matter what your idea is, you need to think, what is the first step? Is it setting up a business bank account? Is it buying a website domain? Is it trying to talk to 50 potential customers and seeing if they're interested in the idea? It's about taking that first step. All of that's free. All of that takes, only an hour or two out of your day. But I think if you can just take that first step, it makes the gap not seem so wide. I think that's what scares people, is they think, I have this idea, let's say, to be the new Uber. And then I'm thinking I have to spend $500,000 on app development. I have to have a full sales, marketing, and hiring team. I have to know how to build a business. You don't need to do any of that. You need to think, what is the first step? I need to raise capital. Everyone keeps thinking about raising capital. If an idea doesn't get capital, you need to prove that the idea has potential. Have you thought about building an MVP? All of those are steps that you need to take earlier down the road. So I think it's defining your first step is really hard. But if you can define it, it's easier to take it.
Got it. I think sequence is also important. The steps that people take, right?
Mm-hmm.
How can people self-evaluate what stage they're currently in and which proper step they need to actually take?
I think it is quite business dependent, but I think a lot of people try and run before they walk. Having the fundamentals right is so important. So you need to set up a business. That's the first step. I think even before you buy a website and buy a domain or whatever, you need to set up a business because you want to buy the domain in the business's name instead of in your personal name. And that has so many benefits in the long run. So set up a business, buy a business domain, and then you need to talk to people. Whoever, whatever business you're doing, you need to have customers. So are your customers a target niche? Like for me, is it doctors? How many doctors do I need to talk to? I talk to 100 doctors. I talk to 50 hospitals and healthcare facilities. And I was lucky I had that network already. That was one of the benefits of it, being a doctor innovating in the healthcare space. There are a lot of people who want to innovate in spaces they don't like have that much of a network in. So you need to go out and make that network. You can post on LinkedIn. Like I often tell people, even if before you have an idea, let's say you just want to think, what am I going to do, but I don't have an idea, you can build a personal brand. That's a free thing you can do. I'm a huge proponent on LinkedIn. I'm a huge advocate for it. The great thing about LinkedIn is you always are talking about ideas and problems. You're not talking, it's not just trying to be viral with a cute video or, taking your clothes off or whatever, trying to be good looking. It's ideas and content that generates leads. And so I was doing a presentation to some medical students last week, and a lot of them said, hey, look, I want to be an entrepreneur, but I'm not an expert. I don't have an idea. I don't know what to do. And I said, well, why aren't you posting on LinkedIn? So many I'll say content creators. I don't know if that works for LinkedIn. You talk about problems you see in the world. Talk about how hard it is being a medical student. Build some interest in yourself, and that's how you build a network. And that's the next step is when you need to do the market research, you already have people who know you.
That's good there. Piggybacking on that, there are people who have an idea, but they're scared that other people will take it, as you mentioned. How can they get over that?
Everyone has had your idea before, is the bottom line. There is nothing novel unless you're the next Sam Altman building ChatGPT. Essentially, nothing, or you're building really deep tech that has specific patents. Nothing else is proprietary. Nothing in StatDoctor is proprietary. You, Lindo, tomorrow could build the same platform I've built. But I think people need to realize is the tech or the product is only one part of the business, right? The founder, the network, the effort, the go-to-market, the sales and marketing plan, the business plan is all the other parts. So yeah, they might be able to just copy your code and build something, but they can't copy you, your reasons for doing it, the people you know, your experience in the problem. So again, this is another thing I wish I had done. It took me a year and a half before I talked to anyone about my product. Me, my co-founder, and the person developing our product were like this little tight-knit group thinking, oh yeah, we don't want other people to steal our idea. Little did we know, 4 other people had tried building doctor marketplaces in Australia alone, and 4 had failed. It wasn't novel. Nothing's novel.
Got it. So, based on that, what are some misconceptions of starting a business?
I think that the first one is what we just touched on, is you have to have a novel idea. I like to tell people, stop looking for the needle in the haystack and learn how to sell the hay. Like people go
Can you say that
looking.
again? I think people have to actually realize what you just said. This is the first time I've heard it, just to be transparent. I've never heard that before.
So it's stop looking for the needle in the haystack and learn to sell the hay. So people wait their whole lives looking for this one niche novel idea. And yeah, they may find it, but until they find it, you're doing nothing. So you need to learn to do something with what you have, which is the hay. Learn to sell the hay, learn to start a business, learn how to market, learn, even if everyone else has the same product, how can yours be different? What's your unique value proposition? How can you get customers? All of that practice is so valuable for when you do find this needle potentially one day. But even if you don't, people have made billions selling hay. Tesla's not the first EV company. Amazon's not the first marketplace. Uber's not the first rideshare app. And they're all multi-billion-dollar companies.
That is so interesting. I don't think many people have seen it in that lens. Do you think it's important before someone begins a startup for them to have their own company on something that is hay based, meaning that it's already in demand?
No, I don't think that I don't think there's any prerequisite you need to start a company. I think that you can turn anything into a successful company if you are willing to put in the work and are willing to make the right networks and are willing to be malleable and pivotable to changing your solution as you go. So, for example, you might start the company as A, and then you talk to 50 people and you realize actually people actually want B. Then you pivot and go, okay, then I'm going to start, trading, selling, marketplacing B. Then you do B to 100 people, and you go, actually, no, actually C's better. So, as long as you're willing to kind of mold your platform, you don't have to have the end design at A. You'll end up at something much larger and much more different, but you just need to get started.
Love it. Okay, let me go a little deeper. A lot of people know that entrepreneurship is lonely. So,
Yes.
have you ever felt depressed during this journey? And if so, how did you overcome it?
Yes. It's really hard hearing no's and being rejected. And there's no time in my life I've been more rejected than in the early stages of starting StatDoctor. Going to hospitals and them saying, no, we don't want this. Or going to doctors and saying, look, we've got 70 other locum agencies. Why are you doing this? And it's all of those no's are really hard to take. But I think as long as you have a big enough why, then you have the motivation to keep overcoming the no's. And so my why was I was so fed up with the systems in place. I'm
Mm,
hugely advocating of health and trying to keep people healthy. And one of the ways I'm trying to do that is better staff our hospitals and healthcare clinics with doctors.
mm,
And so my why was big enough that even though I got no's, I knew I had a solution that would be helpful eventually. And so I kept iterating, kept talking to people, kept pivoting my product till it
mm.
became a solution that they couldn't live without.
So, for you, what is the thought process when people are saying no, 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 no to you? It seems like it's not going to go anywhere. What's the thought process to actually keep on?
I asked them no why. So that way you're getting actionable information as to why they're not using the product. Is it price? Then you need to go back and look at your pricing structure. Is it value? Then you need to look at your value proposition. For us, our biggest issue was security. Hospitals and healthcare clinics weren't happy with the level of credentialing that we were doing for our doctors, and that became quite apparent. So we had to go right back to the drawing board and go, how do we get our credentialing at the same level as
Mm,
locum agencies to give these hospitals the same security that the agencies did? And then as soon
mm,
as we did that, we're cheaper, faster, and tech based, and we solved their biggest pain point, then things
mm,
started rolling. So you need to figure out why they're not buying from you. And then
mm.
is that something that you can overcome?
That makes sense because usually people hear when you say no, just keep on. But you're saying different. You're saying they say no, you ask why. You get
Yeah.
an action plan from it. So that no is actually helping you.
Yeah. I think especially in startup world, see a lot of that advice comes from successful people who already have have solidified their product and are just trying to sell as much as they can of a product they already know is really good. But when you're a startup, you don't really have a product. You have a mold of what you think is the right solution, and you have to be willing to constantly mold it. And we're still molding StatDoctor today. We're still early stages. And so instead of just pushing until they say yes, you need to take their no, go back to the drawing board, and then come back with a better solution that answers their no. And then they might say no again and say, no, it's too expensive. Then you go
Mm,
back and say, what is the lowest we could do? Then you go back to them again. They say, no, we don't like the way it functions. Well, what part of the functionality don't you like? Let's fix that. And so you need to keep iterating with two or three valued customers that
mm.
have enough faith and trust in you, that you've built a relationship with, that can see the problem you're trying to solve, to help you get kind of to the end. One of the mentors who started working with me told me last week, every single thing you assume is going to be wrong. And it's one of those things that's so true. I'm a doctor, and so I thought I was building a product that was really valuable for all doctors until I started talking to doctors, and their problems were not my problems. Even though we were both locum doctors, I thought we had the same problems with agencies. They were quite
Mm,
clear on the issues that they wanted us to solve, which is different from the issues me or my co founder, who's also a doctor, were trying to solve. So, talking to your customers, constantly changing and pivoting your product is so important and valuable in the early stages.
got it. So let me ask you this. What are your current pain points? And as a founder, how do you tackle them?
Our biggest pain point at the moment is trying to convince hospitals and healthcare clinics, instead of emailing their vacant shifts to all the locum agencies in Australia, to go and click a different tab on their website, go to our website and post the shift to just StatDoctor. So, StatDoctor, we fill about 25% of the shifts posted on our platform. And through a locum agency, they almost have a 100% chance of having that shift filled because they're going to 70 locum agencies. So the question becomes, how can we fix that pain point? So we've gone through two ways. The first is we now accept the emails that they would do to the 70 locum agencies. So we are 71st locum agency, and we're building tech to automate that onto their hospital website so they can advertise it. So that way we can get all their shifts straight on. And then the second thing is we're looking at ways to integrate StatDoctor into their rostering systems. So as soon as a vacant shift is available on their roster, it automatically pings onto the StatDoctor platform. So we're
Mm,
trying to tackle it from both ends. And again, it's exactly as I was saying, we found a pain point. This is what hospitals don't like. And we have a product that's very malleable. This is what makes startups so much better than really successful companies. You can pivot, you're so malleable.
mm.
And huge companies that's massive processes with 150, 200 employees, even though they're making hundreds of millions of dollars a year, can't pivot like we can and can't just add
Mm.
different infrastructure and business models. It's just me and my co-founder, so we can do what we want.
Got it. I don't know, this was very, very good. A lot of people they're sticking to this point right now, and at this point, I'm sure they want to know more about you. Can you explain a bit about StatDoctor?
Yeah, sure. So StatDoctor is a locum marketplace. We connect verified locum doctors directly with hospitals and healthcare clinics. We're trying to tackle a $1 billion market of locum agencies that exist in Australia and New Zealand. But we're trying to take things further. So we don't just want to fill shifts, we want to be a digital front door for doctors. A lot of tech at the moment focuses on patient care, and that's really important, but nothing actually tackles the problems of doctors. So the first issue we're tackling is locum shifts. The second is networking. So StatDoctor will be a networking platform for doctors to be able to network with one another. Then we're going to build some CPD and education all into the one platform. And we're not trying to do this on our own. We're bringing in third parties using our digital platform to be able to do that for us.
Perfect. Anu, this was very good. Thank you so much for jumping on and helping many people who also want to build a business. I appreciate it.
Thanks for your time, Linda.